Hello.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Mystic and the Machine. Hang on, we're a little bit out of focus. 2 seconds. There we go. Much better. Thank you guys so much for coming. Sorry this week's episode is late again. It's kind of Jake's fault again this time. For having it.
Such a
For being
busy
so
fucking
busy
life.
and having such a fabulous life.
So many apologies for me and my fabulous life of being busy.
It was a cool event though on Monday. It was like a screening thing.
Yeah, it was a screening of this producer that I've been working with, Craig Leon. He basically produced these cult classic albums about ancient aliens, actually, which kind of is a lot of serendipity and kind of how we bonded when we worked on the Ramones together. And then so then we became buds, and then we sort of mixed these classic albums together. So we mixed Nomos and Visiting, his first two seminal sort of like early synth albums from the 80s, and then we also mixed Canon, which is his kind of follow-up from 2018 2019. And that was really fun. It was great to do it at Dolby. What am I doing? Yeah, we screened it at this in Soho Square. But it was pretty fun. We also did a show at Hackney Earth like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
that was like gargantuan. That was fucking mega. That
Hearing
was
it on that
crazy.
sound system was fucking, because it's like you're completely immersed in the sound, like and then also an album that's like as experimental and like as avant-garde as that.
Yeah, just to get the love that it's gotten is pretty awesome. I've heard all sorts of like funny little stories about that album and how it sort of infiltrated culture, which has been like funny. But yeah,
but also just the fact that it's like UFO, like it's about the Dogon tribe.
Yeah.
And their encounter with like the Nomos, and there's this like really cool kind of visual album to go along with it. And then the Canon is more about like sacred geometry and like all these like weird principles or whatever. And it's just like, it was really cool. It was a cool experience.
It was great.
Cool.
It was great to put it all together. And it's been such an honor to work with Craig as well. It was great to put it all together with him, and I can't wait to do more stuff with him. It's going to be great.
It's also been an interesting like week in the news as well. Not so great week in the news.
I just ignore everything now completely because it's just like it will just make you so depressed.
And like depressing or whatever.
Like they're really ramping up all of this like Ukraine war stuff in a way that's pretty toxic.
Yeah, especially like in the UK currently. Our Prime Minister just gave a massive speech last week. Basically, it almost sounded like a official declaration of war.
Oh dear.
It sounded like he was basically implying that we are at war with the Russians. And it, I guess, worries me currently because of how much like the UK has like given in terms of aid and in terms of weapons to Ukraine, and how deep on Russia's shit list we currently are. And then also the state of the economy and everything else going on in the country. The fact that this is like the primary focus now is like really like distressing.
It's pretty grim. It's pretty grim.
It's weird to have like financial crisis hang over your head, like nuclear war hang over your head, like all of this other shit, and then on top of that the culture wars won't stop raging. There's been quite a few incidents that have stoked those flames in the past week as well. I mean, the obvious one being the
shooting and whatever.
The school the Christian school shooting, which has been basically all anyone has been talking about. But I guess part of what we try to do on this show is to like not be culture warriors, but to be culture medicine.
Culture monks.
Culture medicine women and men, basically. And I found this really interesting article that I thought would be interesting to talk about today. And it's about Jung's theory on isms. And I think a lot of it kind of applies to the current moment and applies to some of the issues and pitfalls of the current moment. And I thought it might be interesting to like...
Well, it's interesting framing for sort of a lot of the 20th century, basically. And anything kind of post, what do you call it? Like modern science, kind of the birth of modern science and stuff, like Renaissance, I guess. So, yeah. materialism, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Let me see if this is going to work.
What if it'll let us show it?
Hang on. Let me try again. Hang on.
If it'll let us show the piece. It's
There
in the
we go.
there it is.
There we go.
It's in the
We've
description.
got it in the description as well, so
Yeah.
you can have a little
Have a
look.
look at it.
And if
we're
it's
not-
if it interests you, definitely take
Yeah.
a read of the whole thing, because the whole thing is quite interesting. But we've
Yeah.
got some little highlights that should be good.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I'll just start with, hang on, I'm just like looking at my notes. Yeah, so I guess I'll just start with Jung's first initial quote about like isms and the sort of political, I guess, modalities of today. So quote, quote, the political and social isms of today preach every conceivable ideal, but under this mask, they pursue the goal of lowering the level of culture by restricting and altogether inhibiting the possibilities of individual development. With more foreboding than real knowledge, most people feel afraid of the menacing power that lies fettered in each of us, only waiting for the magic word to release it from the spell. This magic word, which always ends in ism, works most successfully with those who have the least access to their interior selves and have strayed the furthest from their instinctual roots into the truly chaotic world of the collective unconscious. Yeah, I don't know. I found that really interesting because I guess what he's saying is that those who are deeply removed from their instinctual selves are the ones that are like the most susceptible to kind of falling for isms, which I definitely think is true. Like even with this whole like the school shooting thing, you see a similar thing with like incels that are radicalized, for instance. They have committed similar acts of violence, and it seems as if people who are like attracted to these incredibly extreme ideologies and isms are lacking that rootedness in themselves.
Definitely.
And it seems as if more and more people these days lack that rootedness in themselves, which is why isms are so pervasive.
I remember chatting to a very online leftist once, and them actually kind of, describing how communism was essentially filling like a religious hole in there.
They admitted it. I remember I was there.
And so
they literally said that it was what replaced religion for them.
Yeah, and I think that's quite telling, I guess.
Yeah.
With sort of the importance in which people put upon the isms, and like exactly what you just said, like filling the void because you can't actually be fulfilled yourself.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of reluctance as well to criticize isms because people feel like isms are the only way that you can assert your beliefs about the world and like differentiate yourself from the things that don't align with your ideals. But that's not what it's used for. It's not like seen as a tool. It's seen as like a replacement for a sense of meaning and like purpose a lot of the time. So yeah, that's just kind of like an intro, I guess, for what Jung's like overall ideas are. But yeah, you go with your first notes and then I'll go with mine.
We're gonna 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, 1 2 1 2.
Okay. So one of the first quotes that stuck out to me was, Jung was always concerned for the person, the individual, as the carrier of consciousness and the only source of genuine change. So it's understandable that he disliked any ism that suffocated or hindered individual development and freedom. And I think he kind of does go in that pretty much all isms hinder and like cage in the sort of individual's ability for growth and development, because it sort of puts a framework in which reality is then shaped upon through it, and so you can't be truly open or to anything that could possibly come into your life.
Outside of that, what about, because I know you've been reading a ton of Robert Anton Wilson lately, and I know that kind of aligns with his view on like reality tunnels. Do you want to like explain some of that?
I mean, as in like what reality tunnels are, or sort of like, I mean, reality tunnel is sort of like something that you will become entrapped in if you don't kind of keep a sharp eye out, really. And like you'll end up realizing you're repeating a lot of opinions and stuff that happen to fall within a framework of ideology. And it's only really in modern times where those have become starkly obvious.
Yeah.
Where you
Yeah.
can go, Rachel Maddow, you know, da burr.
Yeah.
If you like
Yeah, yeah,
basically share those links, and that's where you
Yeah.
get your like current events and stuff,
You're
you're in a
in that
reality
reality
tunnel.
tunnel,
You're in a
yeah.
democratic reality
I feel
tunnel.
like it's because before the reality tunnels were a lot more, I guess, broad, but now they've become a lot more narrow and niche,
Well, I think
which is why they're easier to kind of pinpoint.
I think it was definitely part of like the 24-hour news cycle
Yeah.
and the sort of like branching out of private news networks and this
Yeah.
kind of thing, and sort of less of like a Walter Cronkite BBC.
Yeah.
We're presenting the news, and like this is the news how you're gonna like it, and this is the news how you're gonna like
Yeah.
it if you're on this side. And
Yeah.
it kind of, when you had that split, like I think what was it, in the 80s or something. That was kind of when it really started to
I
go
mean,
downhill.
it's even worse now with like competing like language models being created for ChatGPT.
Exactly.
Because people are afraid about the ideological biases contained within that reality tunnel. And it's true. I mean, I've tested it. I've like tried to see whether or not these platforms like have biases, and they definitely do have inbuilt biases. They definitely have like a reality tunnel. But it seems as if like we're splitting off in so many absurd different directions now.
Well,
it's hard to get any kind of like
I feel like there were.
congruent view.
I feel like it's the opposite, actually. I feel like it's converging of reality tunnels, and where there used to be lots of like different people that were quite radical and quite weird and different and had different kind of like ways of viewing the world. Now they all kind of get sucked into and conformed into the closest reality tunnel.
Yeah.
So like
yeah.
if you were an environmentalist or whatever, that didn't necessarily mean that you were like completely sold on all of the rest of the liberal ideology. That meant that you care about the planet, and that this was like, you know, affecting your life or something you particularly cared about. It didn't mean you wholesale
automatically become
subscribe to
Klaus Schwab's
yeah,
like,
it doesn't mean
friend.
you wholesale subscribe to
yeah.
all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And like now I don't think that's the case. Now I think
No.
if you were to sort of try and make any kind of progress as an activist
Mm-hmm.
within environmentalist sort of circles, you definitely would need to be a liberal or like
Yeah,
democratic or whatever.
yeah,
Like, there's
yeah.
a zero chance that
Yeah.
you would be able to make any progression.
Yeah, it's like the same.
Not even like a liberal. You would have to be woke. You'd have to subscribe to that kind of ideology
Yeah.
of liberalism.
It's the same thing with this whole like shooting that's occurred. Like on one side of the aisle, you have people who are afraid to condemn it or have like feel the need to kind of come to sort of jump in front of it because it includes someone who they, you know, have decided is part of their tribe, or someone who represents an identity that they feel a sense of affinity to. So therefore they are not being as critical of it as they would be if it was for other people. And then on the other side, you have people who are using this as like an opportunity, as like a platform to demonize like a group of people wholesale. It's like constantly
Yeah.
and it's so obvious as well, like you said, now, because there is no consensus anymore. It's just like extreme polarity on either side, and no matter, and like you said, yeah, all the nuance also gets sucked into each side. Which is really frustrating.
And I feel like, I don't know if it's kind of, and you hear some bad people online say things like this, but I feel like there is kind of like a silent majority that isn't on either one of those reality tunnels, but that is actually not kind of propagated in the media. It's not as like well represented, where kind of people are pretty sick of the toxicity of both of these really limiting ways of viewing the world, and want something else, but are also too scared to suggest anything because everyone is just shot down if you try and like
but even then
suggest anything, or like you're seen as a utopian, or you're like, you know what I mean, it's all about being an adult is about compromise and all of these kinds of things, right? Like this is kind of all the bullshit that you would hear.
Even then, according to
even
Jung,
around like, you know, defensively voting in a democratic system and things like this, it's like all of the
but even then, according to Jung, isms is kind of what sells, and isms is also what get people animated and what get them passionate and what sort of like hits at their emotional center. Things like nationalism, all of these things that are used to kind of stir up emotion. That's why, you know, everything now is sort of represented by an ism.
Yeah.
or is attempting to draw you in based upon an ism. And yeah, like all human beings, one of the things that Jung disliked the most was isms. And he also disliked theories as well. And that's the thing behind a lot of these different social phenomenon. Theories are kind of the backbone, whether it be like social theories, philosophical theories, all of these different theories. But here's what a quote from Jung about what he had to say about theories. He says, theories are the very devil. He wrote in a foreword to the third edition of volume 7 of his collected works. And this is because theories are impersonal, cloaking a lack of experience and ignorance, and fostering bigotedness, superficiality, and sectarianism. The process of turning an adjective into a noun often results in an abstract concept that is impersonal. Similarly, Jung disliked big groups, mass movements, and activities that distracted the individual from tending to his or her inner life. So isms like sectarianism, expressionism, escapism, futurism, and sensationalism were things that he found objectable. He felt isms fostered anarchy and chaos. So I guess, yeah, he's saying that like theories kind of imprison things, and oftentimes they, I guess, compensate for a lack of actual tangible like experience. Like according to the Jungian psychoanalytic model, truth is something that it uncovers itself through embodied experience. The mind gets in the way of essence, basically, and essence is what you're trying to get at. So the more you're sitting around theorizing and the less you actually do, the less effective you become in the world. So I guess that
Jung said this.
Yeah.
As the dandy that he was.
I know. He's sitting in Switzerland.
I mean,
all safe.
with his like aristocratic wife.
Yeah.
Giving him all the like, you know, things that he could ever want and desire.
Look. We're not talking about Jung the man here. We're talking about Jung the vessel for logos, for like universal truths.
It's more like
from the universe.
Do as I say, not as I do kind of thing.
Pretty much, yeah.
He doesn't strike me as the most active person.
I mean, he had a very like active career and like mind.
Although he wrote a lot of books.
Yeah. That takes a lot of will to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely.
And
but, like,
discipline and motivation.
But I would say the act of doing and living is definitely a lot more.
He did. He had his garden. He had his fucking garden.
garden.
He had his garden. He had his kids. He was really into like cultivating nature and all kinds of shit. Like he traveled around the world. Like he had a pretty fucking full life.
I feel like Ernest Hemingway is someone that more can like fit that bill of like doing and like, you know, instead of thinking so much.
Well, even then, I get Jung's skepticism towards theory, and I wish it was a perspective that more people embrace today. That's not to say that theory isn't useful, but like you have to be embodied.
Well, it's interesting.
Otherwise, you're
like,
ineffective.
In most recent times, the biggest theory that's kind of come around are like conspiracy theories, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like things that are described as theories.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, like that. Even that, I think, could be applied pretty well to conspiracy theory.
Yeah, there are lots of people
in some instances.
Yeah.
Not in some others, as we've been proven over time.
Even though, of course, I'm not like against I guess parallel thinking when it comes to political and social events. Like I'm not against people reading between the lines and coming up with novel insights or theories. Like I have no problem with that. But the problem with like conspiracy theory in general is that it can engender the exact same passivity. Oh, it's all fucked and it's all ruled by the Illuminati anyway, so that you don't bother like trying to do anything, and don't bother trying to kind of involve or people use it as an excuse. Avoid filling exercise. They may have like a ton of stuff going on in their life that they're avoiding by, you know, diving into these mysterious questions of reality and politics and stuff. So I think it can be similarly as like destructive, just as it is with any theory that you go too far with.
Even like the Fermi paradox and stuff like that, right? Of like, if by the numbers we should be surrounded by life in the universe, and where is everyone, kind of thing.
What do you mean?
Like that, the theory is that if there would be so many, like if there's this many galaxies or whatever, and so many whatever, that there would then be this many planets that could then equal to this many that could be at whatever civilization stage where is everybody? Why haven't we kind of found any aliens, or why haven't they seen us, or anything like that? And it's kind of a void-filling exercise from the lack of information and data that you actually have about the
like, even though I'm
situation,
super interested in this whole UFO question, and I love kind of, you know, sometimes I guess diving into the mystery around it and feeling the sense of awe and like wonder that there is this great mystery out there that we don't know about, and there is something interesting going on. I also am super frustrated by a lot of the content around it and don't want to watch a lot of the content about it, because it seems like that same theorizing for the sake of theorizing, just endless theory, endless going down rabbit holes and idle theorizing. And it's like not embodied, and it kind of becomes alienating and weird and grifty and like, what? I don't know.
Not necessarily, I would say. I feel like there are some journalists, people like George Knapp, and people that like do actually sort of like spend years trying to like
but they say stuff when
the
they
right
have something to say,
when they're allowed to say what they have knowledge of what they can say.
But they're not just there endlessly trying to sort of mine for theories in order to keep people engaged.
But then there are like professional disinformation agents who will like come up with the big theories, right? And I feel like,
oh my God.
I don't know, this is why I'm super on the fence around some of the like dialogue around it, of like basically the Illuminati machines, or what you're seeing with the kind of like, you know, tic-tac machine and things like that. These are all theories and shit, right? It's all like trying to fill a gap. It's all trying to like substantiate something that you don't really know, and you kind of have to take someone's word that they had some fucking dodgy conversation with some member of the Illuminati, basically, that told him with a wink and a nudge.
Yeah, but either way, whether it be around a conspiracy or like a identity or whatever it is, or some kind of political thing, like theory can be paralyzing, and it is disembodying if you spend too much time like endlessly like engaging in it. And I do wish people would like, I guess, take more of a skeptical and tenuous approach to it. I
feel like one of the quotes I picked also talks about here we go, filling the void. Sort of, it's kind of relevant to what you were just saying. There's one of the other quotes that I picked was, the Freudians usually fail to mention Adler's merits as they make a fanatical creed of their sex hypothesis, but fanaticism is always a compensation for hidden doubt.
I guess in that part, he was kind of, this part, the author's talking about Freud's dogmatism, and Jung was sort of complaining about the issues he had with Freud's dogmatism. And this specific quote about fanaticism being a compensation for hidden doubt, that applies to so much.
That's what really rang for me. And I feel like
that applies to so much,
with even a lot of like the identity politics and stuff like that. Like a lot of it, like none, there is no clear answer around like all of these existential kind of questions,
even gender,
around gender, around race, around like reparations for like all of these sorts of things that are big questions. Like there isn't really like a clean, nice, happy answer that would really satisfy, I think, most of situations within whatever grievance you have around whatever identity, replaced with X kind of thing. But then that hidden doubt is what then creates
fanaticism.
No, this has to be the way, because this is injustice and fucking, you know, rah, rah, rah.
I feel it's the same thing around gender. Like, you meet certain people who identify as like X or Y, and this is usually rare. The ones who just don't care and sort of get on with their lives and aren't fanatical about it. I assume that it's because they have some kind of hidden or deeper comfort with themselves. And there isn't as much doubt. But I feel like the ones who are super radical and super crazy and super confrontational, I feel like they are harboring some doubt, and that's the reason why they
it's also like
project that out.
It's the more extreme your ideology is,
the more you probably doubt.
Yeah, the more room there is for that hidden doubt, and then it like gets replaced exactly as it says with that fanaticism. Even like, you know, extremists with like you know, Taliban and all of this kind of thing to sort of really believe the stuff that they believe. You've either got to really kind of have a screw loose, or like, you know, you're hiding up for that with like your doubt, with like further fanaticism and further trying to like prove yourself and like, move to the Middle East and whatever the fuck.
I watched an Adam Curtis documentary a couple of nights ago, which we should even probably do an episode about because it's just so fucking phenomenal. But it was about the end of World War II and like the end of Nazi Germany, basically, and the Nuremberg trials.
He picks the cheery topics.
I know, yeah,
Adam does.
totally. Complete with like some Aphex Twin like mood music in the background. He's great. I love him. I try to copy him with my YouTube videos all the time. Like I don't do the best job of it, but I try. But yeah, I was watching a documentary where he was about the Nuremberg trials and the end of World War II and all of that stuff. And yeah, it was sort of an exploration of how when the Nazis were, being put on trial, many of them had no remorse in a way that was obviously shocking to the Allies, to the point where the Allies literally felt like these people were not human. They were some kind of monster, some kind of alien monster. And the way Adam Curtis talks about how they dealt with the horrors of the Holocaust was through basically saying we need to like repress Nazi ideology, push this thing away because it's so dangerous that it can't ever be kind of exposed for what it was. And we need to kind of erase and eradicate this because these people what they did wasn't human. And instead of them to examine why this thing happened and why other human beings would behave like this, they just kind of were like, no, this is evil. We're going to kind of push this away. And like Hannah Arendt, she's the one who came up with the concept of the banality of evil. She was watching the Nuremberg trials and she basically was maligned for her theory of the banality of evil. People were like, how can you say that evil is banal? How could you say that someone as evil as that Nazi over there is the same as me? That's not a human being. But she was like, no, that is a human being. And there are certain forces that can engender anyone to behave monstrously, like no matter what, basically. And when you look at like, really take a look at the Third Reich and its ideology and in what Adam Curtis was kind of, I guess, attempting to analyze, like the whole thing was like cobbled together this kind of romanticized view of like German history. None of it was actually like real or had any sort of material rooting. It was a complete fantasy. And that's a feature of these isms and what happens when you go too deep into them.
Into like myths.
Yeah.
Like I was like a modern myth.
Yeah.
That sort of Hitler was trying to weave, I guess, the Nazi ideology.
Yeah. But I think people now, they think, oh, that happened in the 20th century, and anything that happens now that's similar would have the same features. But that's not necessarily true. There's been many things since that have had similar characteristics. Like, and even things now, I would say all of the kind of extreme kind of elements of each political pole show these sorts of characteristics. And it's incredibly worrying to see it becoming more normalized and like popular and like, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. But yeah, which other, what was your other note? Hang on, let me check mine.
Should we check the chat quickly whilst we go between the next notes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hang on a second. Boom, boom, boom.
Oh my goodness.
We've had some chat.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hello, folks. Hello, Sid, AJ, George, Amadan, not Bob, someone else.
Hang on, I'm just looking for... Anything?
Everyone's just having a jolly good time.
Yeah, I thought
in the
so.
chat,
I thought so. Look at your notes. Hang on while I look at mine.
Oh, someone said, I said this on a reply to a tweet of yours, Angie, but when I was anti-white, I was depressed as hell. Were you like, I got to ask, brother, were you like one of those, oh my God, who was the guy that you watched a little bit?
I forget his name.
It's that gay guy who would like do these streams where he would have like all these white people behind him that felt really guilty.
Ghazi. He
Ghazi.
would have like white people behind him who were
Yeah.
like his slaves, and that like
And
felt
then,
super
and
guilty.
he would like even like tell them to do really demeaning shit in between him just like talking about stuff.
What a fucking gangster!
Just to kind of prove
What
a
a
point
boss.
or something, I guess.
What a
and
boss.
and they would all do it, and it was really really fucking cringe.
He was like a racial dominatrix.
And then I mean, I think sometimes he would say some things where you're like, yeah, like I mean that's a little bit aggressive and kind of radical, but I get where you're going with that, and like I get the point, you know.
I mean, his
the blacks
whole-
have had it rough. I get it, okay. But then he would say something like, "Oh, if you're like in an interracial relationship, that's akin to rape," and it was just like,
Yeah.
okay, man. Like I feel like that
Whoa,
is
that's like very Freudian
that
and
is
like
fucking wild.
super weird, dude.
Like I could not subscribe to those kinds of levels of
But
radicalism.
no, that's
if I'm
somebody
honest.
whose entire persona is built on like resentment, and it's exhausting. And like the person who said that when they were quote unquote anti-white, they were miserable. Like if you're anti anything, if you're that like I understand that there are genuine grievances that you'll have as somebody who's like a minority in like Western society, but you have to have like your soul matters.
The chat knows Ghazi.
Oh, the chat knows Ghazi. Based. No, like your soul matters, like your essence matters, like you actually being the unfolding process that is yourself. That's important, and that's way more important than any grievance or any ism.
But I feel like even there definitely.
And
there's-
if you allow that to be subsumed into grievance and ism, you are out of touch with yourself. You're out of touch with life. You're out of touch with like the flow of life.
I feel like
it's
there was
like deeply unhealthy.
There's definitely like the whole gap for fanaticism. It fits in their ideology like quite well.
Yeah.
Like the guy that ran his weird little cult thing was like a Maoist or something.
Yeah.
And
It
ran
was
some like
yeah.
sketchy like community
Center.
volunteer thing. Which he
And,
then
like-
left after many years and like completely trashed.
Yeah.
And then said that they
Before
worked
he was
everyone
like trying to
like
get people to join to donate money.
yeah, full on Scientology,
yeah,
but
it
like
was, like-
leftist for blacks kind of vibe.
Yeah,
It was so
it was
fucking weird.
bizarre and like fully insane.
And then only like after a matter of years,
and then a bunch of white guys joined, and like I don't know, and these were young people who should have been building up their lives and investing into themselves
It's
and
just,
accomplishing things and having experiences, but instead he joined a communist cult and like
for blacks.
he joined a cult. It's sad. It's just sad to see how isms have kind of, like you said, replaced religion, which Jung does talk about in this thing. Isms have kind of taken the place of religion, and the corrosive effect that that's currently having, because these isms aren't a higher principle most of the time. It's just a cover for people's egoic kind of, desires, and their desire to reconcile their internal conflict through something that's disguised as like a higher purpose, but that's really just serving their ego.
Or it's like,
And it's so dangerous.
it was
It will
like-
eat your life.
Was-
Like it
wasn't
will
the
fucking eat your life.
Wasn't the ultimate plan to sort of like get like a bit of America to be like their land? And
Whose
to
land?
like the I can't remember the name
The
of their groups.
Uhuru organization,
There you go.
yeah.
That they wanted to make the Uhuru Nation in like
Yeah.
a part of America, and
Yeah.
this would like make up like a reparations agreement or something like this.
They
where
were
could do,
literally
like,
getting people to donate reparations to their organization.
where they could do like fucking full on communism or whatever, but only for blacks.
Yeah.
Like this was kind of like a unique
And they
kind
had
of
like
madness.
a hair product called like Decolonize that they sold. It was called
I mean, dude, that is.
Decolonize.
I mean, where is
man.
what's his name? Where's Aaron McGruber when you need him? To
I know,
like
literally,
come and do
literally.
a Boondock special, man. How
I
is that
miss
not?
him. I really miss. I hate that Boondocks got buck broken. Like I feel like
Oh,
right now
I
is
can
the
s-
best time for another season of Boondocks.
I can see it right now of like Uhuru recruiters coming up to Uncle Ruckus's house.
Oh my god, the chat is popping. Is it because we mentioned Ghazi Kodzo? What is
I
it?
believe so.
Oh
I
dear.
believe so.
What are people saying?
Haha, join the new communist cult now for blacks. Worst ad campaign ever. Hey, I don't work in marketing, all right? This is a reason.
Oh my god. Wait, what else is being said? Someone said something about Graham Hancock
What? Where was that?
up there.
Oh, not
I
Bob.
said this on a reply to Angie's tweet. Oh, sorry, my bad.
Oh, I'm not sure what
Oh,
he's
sorry,
referring
I
to.
missed something.
Because it's in there.
I
But
missed
yeah.
something. Okay. Yeah, moving on.
Do you want me to do my next?
Yeah, you do your next one,
My
and
next
then I'll
one.
do my
All right.
next one because you've
Hold
had
up.
2 now. But I'm like, I need to
Hold
actually
up.
like properly look at my notes.
Let me do this. And let me get my bits up. That sounds way more sexual than it needs to. Okay.
You're gonna get your bits out.
I'm gonna get my bits out. All right. This is the bit that was interesting for me. Western culture, with its stress on science, objectivity, and logic, sees little wrong with intellectualism, but Jung felt intellectuals know neither themselves nor people as they really are. And I mean, you call Lex Friedman a robot all the time, and I feel like he's the kind of like closest thing that our generation has to like an intellectual in
I
our
can't
generation.
believe you fucking said that.
Well, who would you put as an intellectual from our generation?
I
that's
don't know.
Like,
I don't.
Not,
I don't
not
know
like
how.
a late 30s, like kind
I
of
don't
like
know how I
millennial
would
that's,
answer
like,
that
actually
question,
kind of
but
closer to
nobody
our
who's
end.
like known in the media like that. Like mostly people like who grind away on Substack and like
Eric Weinstein. I don't think he knows people. Do you know what I mean?
No, I don't think Eric.
Even in the way that
knows
he
people.
talks and stuff, I think it's like quite obvious that he doesn't really he doesn't know the common man.
No, not at all. He's
Like-
so out of touch that it's like, ridiculous. I can't stand his type. Like
I don't
he gives
even.
me
I
the
don't even think.
heebie-jeebies,
I don't even
like,
think. I don't.
bleh.
I don't even think
All of them
Joe
do.
Rogan doesn't know the common man. Anymore.
No,
Do you know
no,
what I
he
mean?
I don't think he does at all.
He's too surrounded by luxury barbecue steaks and fucking millionaire friends and fucking glowy friends and all this other shit.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he doesn't know the common man anymore.
Nah, dude, no, he
He
doesn't.
might talk like the common man and like have a lot of fun conversations, but he doesn't know the common man. And he's kind of the another word person that says well,
None
the
of them
closest to like
do.
a modern intellectual.
None of them do. What's his name? Even the one that wears the plaid shirts and has like the rustic background.
the plaid shirts.
The new right wing guy that everyone's
that
always
fellow with
screaming
the
about.
glasses.
Yeah, what's his name? The one that did the "What Is a Woman" documentary. I fucking forget his name.
Matt something.
Something.
Matt Wolf.
Yeah, like he dresses like this like, sort of rustic, down to earth, but it's all up and it's all like all these like none of the people who are kind of currently in the media are people that I necessarily say that I respect as intellectuals. I think some of them are interesting as media figures, but definitely not as intellectuals.
I don't think Stephen Crowder knows the common man. I think he shouts at them. I've seen him shout at them a lot. Go on
But
the
I think-
street and shout at them and tell them, "No, you're wrong."
But I think in terms of what what Jung's saying here is that like intellectualism again divorces you from the realm of experience and the realm of the body, and you can't really come to full knowledge without incorporating that aspect of your being.
I would say that's part of the self-sacrifice of being an intellectual. Like I think all avenues of life where you really specialize in something, you have to kind of sacrifice in a way something else to become super good at that thing.
Sure, but there should be
And
some
so
semblance of balance. It's kind of
intellectuals-
why Jung had his garden, for
No,
instance.
but I know, but like he's
Like-
still like a pampered little prince man in Switzerland that didn't like follow what he was saying about doing at all. Like,
He did a little
do
bit.
you know what I mean? He was, but to be an intellectual, you have to be of a class. You have to spend time reading books, doing all this other
Of
stuff.
course.
So that is going to, by its nature, limit your life experience in other ways. So this is
Sure.
the kind of like trade-off that you're going to make, and your kind of natural inclination towards something or another is then what's going to shape that. And you'll make those sacrifices without even thinking about it or realizing they are until you maybe wanted to think about doing something else, and then all of a sudden you realize.
Well, no, I don't think that's true. I think it's out of balance. I think that you have to have a semblance of balance, and I think that the best intellectuals and artists do. For instance, like writers, some of the best like screenwriters, for instance, intimately know people. They wouldn't be able to without, being able to observe people and understand how human dynamics work. They couldn't portray that accurately in a visual representation without having those keen observation skills and understanding of people. And they also have to have an intellectual capacity to be able to execute like such a huge thing.
Yeah.
Especially if they want it to have things like subtext and, deeper levels of meaning. Like, I think there is a balance. And I think that if you are somebody who leans more towards the intellectual side, which seems to be more pervasive these days because we're in the information age. So everyone fucking
Likes
fancies
to
them.
think of themselves as an
everyone
intellectual.
fancies themselves an intellectual, and intellectualism
I don't know. That's the thing,
is
though.
valued so highly
You think you know stuff.
above even the body, above even like athleticism. Like kids are, when I was young boys watched football a lot more, and sports and physical stuff. But who are kids watching now? Like debate streamers and like their favorite culture war figures. Like intellectualism is like valued even above like physical activity. People don't even dance anniversary really.
No, we were talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
Weren't we? How
Yeah.
I had to do some mastering for an anniversary of a film called Dance Craze recently. That was an American filmmaker that came over to just film a band called Madness at the time that had a single that would have managed to have some moniker of popularity in America. So he came to follow and see what was happening, and then stumbled across the whole ska scene of London, basically, and then just got performances of all of the best ska tracks from the best bands of that era. And it just goes one after another of all of these amazing performances in these venues that are definitely mostly all closed down now and gone.
Yeah.
But you see all the energy of like the crowd and the people and everything, and you're just like, even me as a musician, I'm like, I go to gigs, I've seen gigs, I'm not foreign to this kind of energy, but it was like actually like that energy was different to what I know. Even then, like watching documentaries like Woodstock '99 and stuff like that, like that's a wild energy. But like that is also like it's not an energy I am familiar with, because things have been so hemmed in and so tightly fucking controlled in the 21st century of like health and safety and like all sorts of other shit, which is sometimes it's great, but then you read stories about like early Hawkwind and Motorhead gigs where they're on the door with a literally homemade sheet of newspaper that's covered in acid and giving it to everyone as they come in. And you're like, well, that would also be kind of fun, like once, like fucking hell.
Oh my god. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like, the overvaluing of intellectualism, I can definitely see how that's also a problem and how that bleeds into the political domain as well. I think that politics is so overvalued now. It's taken the place of religion.
It's not even politics. None of what anyone's talking about is real fucking politics. None of it's meaningful.
No.
All of it is bullshit around the same
aesthetics, postures,
fucking ideas for the last fucking 30 to 40 years. No one's having any real meaningful conversation about like progressive ideas. I mean, no one's even bringing up the fact that we don't need representatives anymore. Like this is like an idea that is not new. This is an idea that was going around in like the 60s with the advent of computers, people being really excited about what the actual possibilities and point of having computers could be and what it could do to revolutionize different aspects of humanity. The utopianism of like the 60s and 70s, or maybe not the 70s, but the 60s definitely.
Yeah.
Like all of this new shit. I don't understand how we're at the start of all of this new AI technology in the midst of the internet really coming to fruition. And everyone's so fucking negative and toxic about it because we've seen the power infrastructure grapple hold of those things and completely fucking sap any type of hope that you might have for them away from it. But like politics, it's not, no one's having a conversation about politics. They're having a conversation through their fucking reality tunnel about the things that have been programmed that week to be talked about. Whether it be gay marriage, abortion, fucking
drag queen story hour,
what bullshit fucking war we should or should not be fucking going to, and how much money we should be contributing to that. Whether fucking, whatever drug or whatever program is like a bad influence on your kid. Like all sorts of fucking bullshit that will just go round and round and round the fucking wheelhouse.
Pretty much.
And no one will talk about like anything
meaningful or positive.
Or structural.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like and I think like we were talking about earlier of like reality tunnels and sort of being on a side and stuff. Instead of like that, the conversation is like the voting system is inherently flawed. Anywhere in the West, like it's all kind of been through older systems and all sorts of shit. You look in America through the whole gerrymandering shit. You look in the UK with the first past the post system. Like if you're someone that gave a shit about democracy, like as everyone seemingly like the headline of the adverts for the election are like, if you care about democracy, you have to vote for my party
Yeah.
because it's going away
Yeah.
if we don't win.
Yeah.
If you cared about fucking democracy, you'd be advocating for a democratic process to
Yeah.
actually achieve any of the fucking steps that you want
Yep.
any of the fucking
Yep.
progress to happen in
Yep.
your country
Yep.
through. Instead, you have all of this bullshit, and there's always all these excuses that come up around why nothing can be done about it.
Yeah.
Money and politics, like all
Yeah.
sorts of shit.
Yeah.
It's always like, oh, well, yeah, we'll get to that, but we got to win the election first. It's like, well, why didn't you get to that, and then I'll fucking vote for you.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the next part of
Sorry,
this.
ramble over.
It's all good. It's all good. Moving on to the next part of it. So yeah, he says in the integrum. Sorry, the integrum is full of danger, for the natural facts will raise their claim in the form of various isms, which are productive of nothing but anarchy and destruction, because inflation and man's hubris between them have elected to make the ego, in all its ridiculousness, the lord of the universe. So I guess here basically what he's saying is that these various isms kind of take the claim of like natural forms and natural facts, and that this causes like an inflation in our ego that makes us believe that we're like masters of the universe basically, and that we can basically dictate reality based upon the reality tunnel that we're in, even if our reality tunnel, you know, comes up against reality. And that's the danger, is what he's saying. It's this ego inflation, the danger of the ego inflation leaves us, you know, vulnerable to delusions. It's like with something like schizophrenia, for instance, or bipolar. One of the symptoms of that is like this kind of inflation of the ego where you feel like you can fly or, you know, can achieve all, you know, in the impossible. That kind of mania then leads to what? Sometimes really negative outcomes.
Icarus complex.
Yeah, Icarus syndrome, basically. And like that applies not just to those kinds of, you know, maladies, but also to any time your ego is overly inflated. It leaves you vulnerable to creating catastrophe. And yeah, that's kind of why I am skeptical of isms, because it's an easy way for you to take on ideas and things about, you know, and take on ideas about reality that aren't true.
Yeah, I guess.
And not challenge them.
But then I think it's very easy to talk about not, and this is what I was making a jibe at Jung. Because like it's easy to poo-poo escapism when you're in a fucking mansion and you've got your pretty garden. You don't need to escape because you're already in relative paradise.
But just because I don't know, I think that's cynical and kind of jaded. Because just because somebody is in comfort doesn't make something that's unhealthy right, simply because that person is in comfort.
I wouldn't say escapism is necessarily unhealthy, and I wouldn't say
It depends
futurism is
on,
also necessarily unhealthy.
well,
either.
it depends on whether it takes precedent over, and it depends on whether it takes precedent over your essence and whether it's being led by your ego, which is like I think what Jung is getting at. Like if escapism subsumes your essence to the point where you're not engaging with life and you're not engaging with your physical body, then it's a fucking problem. Same thing with futurism. If your sort of utopian view of the future stops you from engaging with your present and engaging with the problems of the present, like you see it with like Silicon Valley people and like tech billionaires like Elon Musk, who are constantly, you know, selling this vision of like Mars and human accomplishment. Meanwhile, you go to somewhere like San Francisco and they can't even deal with like the homelessness problem.
Yeah, they got. I said this on the stream or something.
Yeah.
At the end, it might have even been on our old podcast at the end of last year. The way you get your baggage, there'll be a screen to say like what flight has come in. It's like a metal pole with plastic cable ties around a CRT, like cathode ray tube television, like a 90s fat
Videodrome
chunky
TV.
boy fucking TV that you would play N64 and like PlayStation 2 on. They have one of those,
in the San Francisco
that
airport.
are on each of the baggage rooms as you go
Yeah.
to tell you which flight has come
I
in.
think that's what
to
he's
do
saying
that.
when he's talking about the dangers of futurism. Like, you have this city that's full of tech moguls, tech billionaires, people who are futurists, yet the present circumstances are so dire and abject. You know, that's the issue with it.
Or like even like Neom,
Yeah.
like in the Emirates, right? Like that is like a futuristic vision of like cities and everything else, and it's also completely wrapped up in some prince's fucking ego.
Yeah.
Like it would be one thing to like try and actually build a futuristic city based on all these green principles, yada 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 yada. That's one thing.
Yeah.
To be like, it has to be a line like my dick, or like, you know, it has to be this arbitrary thing because it's cool.
Yeah.
Is like ego.
Yeah.
And then introduces complexity beyond what is needed and everything else. So it's just sort of but again, I don't know, but it takes him being being caught with the futurism bug or futurist to have the desire to attempt to try and do something like that. So, and I don't know if that is inherently linked to ego, or if that is like you want, you envision a better or newer, improved version of reality that you want to manifest.
I think that if your
Or do you think
vision
that's
of
just inherently wrapped up in ego?
well, I think if your vision of reality is wrapped up in ego and not like what you perceive the greatest, highest good to be through your essence, then yeah, it is a problem. I think that's the difference. But yeah, another part that I found really interesting was when he talks about Western man.
Oh, I
And-
think I got this quote as well.
Oh, did
if it's the one.
you? And I think this applies to every part of the political spectrum. When Jung makes this criticism, I know there are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to think, oh, this only applies to the right wing or this or that. No, I think this applies to everyone if you're being honest with yourself. And Jung's quote on Western man is, quote, "You get a complete picture of Western man, assiduous, fearful, devout, self-abasing, enterprising, greedy, and violent in his pursuit for the goods of this world, possessions, health, knowledge, technological mastery, public welfare, political power, conquest, and so on. What are the great popular movements of our time? Attempts to grab money and or the property of others and to protect one's own. The mind is chiefly employed in devising suitable isms to hide one's real motives or to get more loot." And I think that applies to every single one of us, regardless of where we stand on the political spectrum. We're all kind of raised in this Western paradigm. And the primary drives that are, you know, stoked within us are, like he said, fearfulness, self-abasingness, and our enterprising desires, our greed, our violent pursuit of goods and possessions, health. Like, people are so fucking health conscious in the Western world as well, and so covetous for things like health and youth, knowledge, technical mastery, political power, and conquest. These are all the things that really underline our drives in the Western world. And what he's then contrasting it here is saying, and all of our political movements are really attempts at gaining those things, hiding themselves underneath the ism. And I think I think that there's some fucking truth to that. I mean, through what I've observed, through having been involved in certain sides of the political spectrum, having had bad experiences with certain sides of the political spectrum, having kind of been floating around in this domain for a long time, like that, it does ring true. And I think it's something that people should be honest about and confront. Like, we're all Westerners at the end of the day. These are all the different things that like drive us. But anyway, I wonder what you think about this part he said about Western man.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. I think that like he does have a disdain for Western, like the Western man in general and Western culture. There's another quote that I've got as well that where he's sort of quite like, but then he also, I don't know, it's interesting because then reading Red Book, he's very, and we had a big discussion about this, he's quite like, see what's in your own like back garden in terms of Western culture and the value of the spirituality and and the symbolism within all of the kind of iconography and everything throughout that, and don't need to look to the East. But the way he like degrades Western man and Western culture, it's like, do you appreciate or think anyone's got it right then?
Well, I don't think he's
'Cause there's only
degrading.
two-
I don't think he's degrading it. I think he's just being honest about the certain drives beneath Western.
But he doesn't. My problem, I guess,
I don't
is
think
that
it's
he
supposed
doesn't.
to be
He doesn't talk about then
judgmental.
the contrast of that.
Well, but that's because
It's not
this is-
man in general.
Yeah.
It's not like human beings have a tendency to. It's specifically Western men, which
Yeah.
then implies through, you know, democracy and structure of society and all of these things, it kind of shapes our psyche in a certain way. But he never then talks about, or he doesn't in this instance at least, talk about how that would be different in Eastern man's like mind.
Yeah.
And I think that like having more of those adjacent kind of things next to each other would be.
Well, he
kind of
does later
interesting,
on talk
compelling.
about collectivism and individualism, and
Yeah.
sort of the difference between individuation and individualism, which I'm going to get into later. But I think he thinks both are futile paradigms. I don't think he thinks one or the other is supreme. I think
All
he's-
of man's mind is futile.
well, I think it's more just about balance and
Yeah.
striking balance.
Yeah.
And actually being your unique self rather than falling prey to either of the opposites. Even though he makes these what you would deem harsh criticisms of Western man, I don't think they're necessarily criticisms. I think he's just making observations about certain drives within Western culture. I don't think he says, oh, there's another culture out there that's superior or whatever.
Yeah.
I think all cultures have their idiosyncrasies and downfalls and
Yeah.
downsides. But in terms of like the passage of Western man, other than your criticism of Jung's appraisal of Western man, did you have anything else that you thought was interesting about it?
I mean, kind of that was what was ringing in my head most of the time about it, to be honest. But
Did you have anything else in your notes?
I was trying to think.
before
There was a bit that also connected to the other bit that I was talking about of Western culture. I think it was watching the daily news. We can observe how demagogues. Oh yeah, it was more about how even this article with what she's talking about, and even the fact that she would sort of say that isms, and she's talking about isms, and she's talking about ists, right? And that even this article is still, she can't help but like tinge it with her own isms and ists.
Yeah.
Where it was sort of saying, watching the daily news, we can observe how demagogues play on the fears of the herd, with their talk of terrorism and favoritism, patriotism and nationalism, all of these magic words Jung warned us about. He knew that people most susceptible to these isms would be those fearful of change, estranged from their inner lives and living in the inner chaotic world of the collective unconscious, e.g. followers of demagogues like Donald Trump.
She couldn't help herself.
Couldn't help herself.
She couldn't
And I
help
think
but insert her.
And what's even weirder is that
Reality tunnel.
she's like bang on with like everything that she says as well.
Prior to that. Well, that's the thing I've noticed with a lot of Jungians. A lot of Jungians will get it and they'll be on the money, but then a lot of them are like boomer like libs.
Yeah.
So they'll like insert their like
It's
weird
even-
reality tunnel shit
even
into it. They can't just like remain objective.
Even in the Robert Anton
like,
Wilson
weird.
groups, like you have the
Yeah.
same thing where people are like posting things of like, woke just means the truth, or like waking up to the truth or something. And it was literally like, I cannot actually believe that you're posting that unironically in a Robert Anton Wilson group.
Yeah.
Like he would be pissing himself laughing.
Yeah.
I could only
Yeah.
imagine.
It's
like, seeing
weird.
that.
It's weird. But regardless, what she said before, sorry, pull it back up again. What she said before about the people who are most susceptible to isms are those who are the most fearful of change and estranged from their inner lives and living in the chaotic world of the collective unconscious.
Of collective consciousness.
Of collective consciousness, sorry.
Um,
I think that
I think possibly with some regards to some parts of it, I think like those that would be fearful of change, I think is a really, knowing that she then ends the analogy with
Donald Trump.
Trump.
Yeah.
It sort of tinges what she's saying a little bit
Yeah.
to me, because I wouldn't necessarily that's such an easy generalization of like republicanism or being
Yeah,
conservative.
but I think the reason why also is because it's an easy cultural scapegoat to beat down on. Because if she was to give an example from the left, that would be then considered controversial. And that's the thing. I think a lot of psychologists are also kind of cowardly.
Well, they're also
because they don't want to. They don't want to poke at areas of pathology in the culture that may possibly damage their credibility or attract ire towards them.
Do you think it's like being an actor in Hollywood?
Yeah, it's like saying Trump bad isn't going to get you a whole lot of cultural ire. But if you say, I think that there are elements of this kind of bad faith, practice / living in, I guess, like BLM or something, then it opens you up to scrutiny and like all kinds of bullshit.
I would say that Hillary Clinton was way more estranged from her inner life than Donald Trump was.
You can see it in her eyes. It's why she smells like sulfur.
Well, just as a character, it just as a character, if you just think about it,
Yeah.
like, I think Donald Trump is very in tune with his wants and like desires.
But in an egoic way.
Yeah, sure, but he's still very like in touch with them. He's not estranged from them at all.
No.
Hillary Clinton looks and talks like a robot. So like, and I don't
Like
know,
a deep thing.
to make I don't know, it's all making it all sidism with it as well, isn't it? But it's also just, I don't know.
But even then, she kind of goes on to say people like this have lost. Well, Jung goes on to say, sorry, not the author of this piece. People like this have lost touch with the angels of their better nature and have become imbalanced and ungrounded, which is another danger with isms. Alienation from the unconscious and from its historical conditions, which spells rootlessness. That is the danger that lies that is the danger that lies in wait for the conquerors of foreign lands and for every individual who through one-sided allegiance to any kind of ism loses touch with the dark maternal energy that is the earthly ground of their being, which I thought was really beautiful.
Very poetic, very, very young.
Very young, yeah. Jake's like he's just sitting there in his little Swedish castle.
Writing his little poems about the human psyche.
You have a lot of animosity towards him.
No, not at all.
I think you're just hating. What was I saying? Well, yeah,
he's just such
saying...
a nervous Nelly. It just comes through in so much of what he writes about. And even like the way he talks about Western man. He's so nervous.
Oh my God.
It's so like neurotic about it.
Would you not be a nervous Nelly if you had like experienced the depths of the unconscious and like connected with your like fucking...
Yeah, but all the good stuff comes from there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
He's always worrying about all the bad bits.
All the good stuff comes from there too.
He's not emphasizing all the ingenuity and amazing things that
He
come
does.
from there.
He does emphasize a lot of that stuff massively. I think it's incredibly life affirming.
He's just a bit of a Debbie Downer to me.
He has to emphasize the bad stuff because there's a lot of bad stuff going on in culture currently. And also when he was alive too, which I guess we'll get to if we have time.
That seems perpetual. Someone to say, hey, there's been good things in there and we're good. We should be good again. Like, that's what we should be having more of.
Well, there is some of that, but you also have to dig through the bad to get to the good. And yeah, I think he does say that, alienation from the unconscious spells and rootlessness from... alienation from the unconscious and from its historical condition spells rootlessness, which I think is really like important to note. And yeah, also the idea where he talks about the conqueror of foreign lands experiences this kind of rootlessness. I think that goes back to what you were saying about his embrace of Western symbolism and his encouragement to of people who are in the West to embrace Western symbolism since it's part of our unconscious. I think that's kind of what he's getting at here, is that if you're separated from alienation from the historical conditions of the cultural unconscious causes a kind of rootlessness that we're experiencing currently. And I think that that's what he's getting at.
Well, it's also like he's saying like conquering foreign lands makes you rootless.
Yeah.
Because you are not in your like your nation of home or whatever. Like,
well, not necessarily
root
nation. It's the fact that you're not engaging as a explorer. You're engaging as a conqueror, which is clumsy and like not something that takes into consideration where you're coming from and also where those people are coming from. And it creates a lot of damage in that sense. I don't think he's saying you can't mix or that you can't like experience other cultures. He's saying that you have to be careful the way in which you approach other cultures. You have to do it respecting the roots of those cultures. And I think like, cause like there's a lot of like people on the right who kind of embrace Jung's ideas. I think they kind of pervert them in a way by attempting to say things like this mean that Jung is saying that, you know, the cultural unconscious is this fixed like thing and that you shouldn't mix and things like that.
Well, it's just sort of like, I don't know if it has been a nation that's not a conqueror of foreign lands.
Yeah.
Every nation is a conqueror of foreign lands.
Yeah, I think this is more
between
of a
neighbouring disputes and all sorts of things.
I think it's more of a metaphor, though. I don't think he necessarily means like
more
literal.
Young poetry.
Yes, more Jung poetry. Yeah. Jesus Christ. What was I saying? And for every individual, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so for every individual who takes one-sided allegiance to an ism, they lose touch with the dark maternal ground that is their being, which I think is really interesting. Like your home, where you're you, where you're from, like that's important. And I feel like people think that it's the least important thing today, which I find incredibly disturbing. Nobody has that honor towards their own development and the unique qualities that they've been given, which is really what like individuation is about. Like later on, Jung goes on to talk about the difference between individualism and individuation. And he sort of describes individualism as a reaction against society, a way of attempting to flounder society's rules in order to quote unquote do your own thing. And he said individuation is not that, and that's like a perversion, and that people are rooted in communities and people do have responsibilities towards other people. So he was like very against individualism, but individuation is about getting in touch with your unique qualities, what makes you particular. And he sees that as the aim of life. And if you do that, then things like being embedded in community, creating strong social bonds, having an impact of the world will arise naturally through the process of like unfolding, through being embodied, through actually like having tangible experience like in the world, not through kind of being caught up in isms, caught up in intellectualism, divorced from experience, like divorced from the body. That's kind of what he's getting at. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty, I don't know. I think it's really interesting.
It was a good article.
Yeah.
It was been a good read, and it's been a good chat about it.
Yeah.
I believe.
And I think everybody should read it if you're interested in like knowing more about the current moment and like some of the mechanics of it and why things are so weird. But let's have a look at the chat and see if there's anything.
Someone's saying thank you for reading their comment. They feel so seen. Good,
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Good. Everyone's saying good night. That's very nice. We have a lovely little bunch here, don't we?
Yeah, we
They're
do.
all very
We
polite
do.
and sweet to each other.
We do.
Yeah, very nice. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Sorry we were late again. Hopefully we won't be late another time, but who knows, really, honestly. I'm not going to make any promises.
Oh my god. Well, yeah, thank you so much for enjoying the stream, and also come join us on Sunday as well for book club. We are reading the Tao Te Ching together at the moment and having a lot of fun with it. That's at 5:30 p.m. EST every Sunday, and you can get access to that by joining us on Patreon. So